Okay, we're live. We're live, everybody. Hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us on this breaking news live stream. I'm sure everyone knows the news. Julian Assange was arrested in the Ecuador Embassy. He was dragged out of the embassy. The images are making their way around the internet. We have Mr. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk, and Alexander Mercurs, the Oracle of London in London. Peter, you are at RT Studios, I believe, and RT is doing a great job covering this story. They were the ones with the images of Assange getting dragged out of the embassy. What's going on, Peter?
It's interesting that RT seems to be one of the only news outlets that is covering it. I mean, I'm looking at our competitors here. They seem to have either no or mild interest in this story. This is a huge story. We've been talking about it on these podcasts for a very long time. We've gotten everything, just about everything perfectly right, except for the timing. We had that scare over the weekend, the impending arrest. I think they didn't like the optics of it because, well, in the UK, they're talking about that endless fiasco called Brexit. Of course, the US isn't talking very much about it, and it's only a matter of time before Julian Assange arrives in the United States to face espionage charges, and we can get into what that may look like. So it's a very dark day for journalism, very dark.
I got a notification from RT, actually, Peter, which said that I think the US has already started the process of extradition. Is that correct? Yep. RT is breaking a lot of news now.
It's my understanding. I've heard that it could be within a matter of hours or days.
I can confirm.
Alexander, is that confirmed?
Yes, it is confirmed. Julian Assange's lawyer, Jen Robinson, has provided some tweets. I sent them to you about a few minutes ago, in which she's confirmed that Assange has been arrested on 2 grounds. One is for skipping bail, which is which we will come to, no doubt. This stale arrest warrant from 2012 in a case which doesn't exist, and the other is in relation to extradition to the United States. There has been a formal request to the British authorities for extradition. He was charged under the Espionage Act by the United States in December 2017. So this is the date of the actual charge.
Peter, do you have Peter, do you have headphones by any chance?
Yes.
I don't have.
You don't have?
You know, I don't, because of the way the Apple phone, you need that extra thing, and I left it at home. I didn't expect this to happen.
Okay, no worries.
I have a question for Alexander Mercurs. What do we know about the ripping up of the asylum agreement that the Ecuadorian government had with Julian Assange? And part 2 of the same question, were the British London police invited?
Yes, they were invited in. They were invited, right. They were invited into the embassy. They actually went into the embassy, seized him there, and dragged him out. Can I just say, before I just deal with the legalities of that, about RT's coverage, it has been outstanding. There have been comments about this in Britain. There's been some jealousy on the part of some British news organizations about the fact that RT was patrolling the embassy all these days in anticipation of something happening. And the result was that they got all the pictures long before anybody else did. It is very big news here. In Britain, it has been heavily covered. It's the lead story in the newspapers, despite all the Brexit disaster. And coming to the legalities of all of this, well, the straightforward answer to your question, Peter, is that there are no legalities here, because Julian Assange is being accused by the Ecuadorian authorities of breaching his bail conditions by acting as a journalist, because that's what it is. That is an absurd argument, besides which, since his internet was switched off in March last year, he has not been able to practice as a journalist, and access to him has been incredibly restricted. People like Craig Murray, his friend, have not been allowed to see him. So the straightforward answer is Ecuador revoked the asylum application on no proper grounds, invited the police in, Assange has been under intense surveillance for several weeks now, apparently, and so we should not look for legalities in this process where really there are none.
Okay, there's people in the chat that are giving us some news as well as to what's going on. They're actually saying that YouTube is blocking the live stream of Assange's arrest in many countries. This is also very, very disturbing news. Alexander, what's the vibe in London right now? What's going on? How are people feeling this?
Well, I think well, obviously there's mixed feelings, and can I just say, last night I read an extraordinary article in the Times which made me think, this is very late, came out very late, that something was going to happen today, which was a ferocious attack on Assange, smearing him by suggesting that there was film of him having engaged in some kind of sexual activity inside the Ecuadorian Embassy. Not a single piece of evidence to support that, needless to say, and that is in the Times of London, one of the great newspapers of the world. Now, that did alert me to the probability that something was about to happen. So, obviously, there are Assange's enemies who are gloating over this. I think an awful lot of people are very shocked and very upset, but we have to be realistic about this. This is not for most British people the big story. The big story is Brexit. It's the uncertainties about the economy. It's many things of that kind. I mean, Assange has large numbers of friends. A lot of people, I guess most people are shocked about this affair, but this is not the priority in most people's lives.
Peter, what's going on next now? What's going to happen to Assange?
Well, I think we've talked about this before. I think the broad outline of what will possibly happen, most likely happen, is he will be extradited to the United States. That paperwork has probably already been.
But what does that mean when he goes to the U.S.? What's the
Well,
prison for life?
I think he will face a grand jury, and when it gets up to that level, then there's no public disclosure. You just have to take the authorities' word on it. Facing trial for espionage, well, that's national security, quote unquote. So the public doesn't have a right to know. Julian Assange could be a judge in Julian Assange's upcoming trial will be presented with evidence that Julian Assange's lawyer may not be allowed to see, Julian Assange himself may not see, and a jury may not see. So this could be all done in the dark. This could all be done behind the cloak of power. And we may never know what those proceedings were all about because they will be deemed secret and a national security risk. That's called railroading somebody. Okay, I mean, when there is no recourse in his own legal defense, it will be rendered useless. Then what's the point of having a trial? What the sentencing for espionage is life. I mean, forever. I mean, and if that happens, we may never know where he goes. I mean, they will literally disappear him. That's one scenario. Alexander McCurris, am I exactly?
Well, absolutely. Can I just say a few things about this? Because, of course, I have read for years, stretching back to the first case that was brought against Assange in Britain over extradition to Sweden, endless denials in the British media and sarcastic statements about how there was no extradition claim from the United States, no evidence of a case against him. And I cannot count now how many of those denials I've read, and we've seen how completely false those denials always were. We've had already have a grand jury indictment. This is important to stress, and that grand jury, to my knowledge, has been in existence since at least 2009. In other words, since the Obama years. The actual charges were brought against Assange and kept secret right up till December 2017. So now we know that there are in fact charges against him under the Espionage Act.
And we learned that by accident, apparently, remember?
Yeah. Well,
learning about the indictment.
Indeed, well, indeed, absolutely. And but of course, it's now been confirmed by his lawyer, who's presumably been formally told about this. What I think is going to happen is that I think that the British are going to do a very truncated extradition process. There are certain rules which are supposed to be followed. We've seen that there's not very much regard for the rules in this case, and I firmly predict that within a very short space of time, maybe even hours, more likely days, possibly if Assange is lucky, weeks, he will be in the United States, and the legal process that we have, that Peter was talking about, will be underway. And can I also say, not only will it be conducted in secret, but the star witness against him, who is of course Chelsea Manning, is not cooperating, and as a result, she is being kept in indefinite detention, which is quite extraordinary to me. And the Ecuadorians claim that they have got from the British this meaningless assurance that Assange will not be extradited to a country where there is torture and where he might face the death penalty. Well, you know, keeping someone in indefinite detention, which is what is happening to Chelsea Manning, well, it may not be torture, but it's certainly a very cruel punishment in my book.
Yeah, I saw Rupley's video of Assange being taken into custody. He looked like someone that was in very bad health. And using all that kind of force against them seemed to me so completely unnecessary. I mean, it was even though the British media outlets didn't have their cameras there. I mean, it still was a very heavy-handed process of taking him into custody. It's such an embarrassment for the UK. It's a shame for the UK.
It's a shame for the UK. It's also, can I just add that we all owe a great debt of thanks to Rupley and RT, because if they hadn't been there, we wouldn't have had this film. We wouldn't know.
But what's also, the glaring hypocrisy of all of this. Look at the sensationalism and the money that was made by media outlets. The Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, individuals, Luke Harding. I mean, they had a real payday with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And you know what? The media outlets, they're publishers. Okay. And I'm sorry. They're news outlets here, and Julian Assange is a publisher. So where is the indictment against the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian? Where's the indictment against those people? Because they did. Julian Assange and WikiLeaks did no different than they did. You cannot criminalize the dissemination of secret information. Okay, that it's not a crime, and now it is being criminalized. This is unprecedented.
Right, now can I just offer? Now this is a very, very faint glimmer of hope. This indictment was made by the grand jury when Jeff Sessions was Attorney General of the United States. Jeff Sessions seems to have been far more interested in prosecuting WikiLeaks than he was in defending Donald Trump or helping Donald Trump, or in fact safeguarding the constitutional processes of the United States over the course of the Russiagate horror. We now have a different Attorney General who is a proper lawyer, and he will be aware of the legal precedents that Peter has just talked about, the fact that publishing has always been protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution. We also know that Giuliani, who is apparently acquainted with Barr and who is one of Donald Trump's lawyers, think that there is no legal case in the United States against Assange. I am offering now a very faint hope. I'm not in any way naive about this, but let's hold on to some hope that with a completely different set of legal authorities now in harness in the United States, and an attorney general who seems to be much more concerned about the law than his predecessor was, we might start to see a different approach being taken. I'm not confident. Have no expectations, but I just offer that as a very faint possibility.
Yeah, one has to wonder if Trump really wants to, if the Trump administration really wants to go to loggerheads with the intelligence community, because when Julian Assange was given asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy, they were essentially calling for his head, for his assassination on live television. Yeah. What did Hillary Clinton say? He should be droned to death. It's a political hot potato in the United States. It's very few people in power are going to come to his defense. The only defense he has is a public uproar and other journalists. Yes. And that is not happening. That is that is poverty of this situation. Yes. Journalism. Think about it. Journalism is the only profession mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. The freedom of speech was so important, for the framers, that they actually mentioned the profession of journalism and the protection of journalists. Yes. The only profession in the Constitution. Yes. And now it's being betrayed.
They're not gonna come to his aid, unfortunately. No. They haven't said anything. They haven't done anything. Well, I think Assange is pretty much on his own. I agree, Alexander. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope, but I seriously, I think we're putting. Yeah, you offer it.
No, I'm not putting any weight on it at all. I just suggested. As I said, I mean, there are genuine lawyers in the United States. I mean, journalists seem to be a hopeless case on this case. I mean, all the journalists, the real journalists who are protesting about what is happening and who are worried about the First Amendment seem to be in alternative media. The mainstream media is cheering this. Exactly. The mainstream media is cheering this thing on. But I do know that there are some real lawyers in the United States who are people of integrity. By the way, some of them are on the left, some of them are on the right. It's not a political thing.
Let's get to some super chats. Yeah.
We will see whether that carries any weight in this. Carry on.
All right. Yeah. Let's get to some super chats. We have a lot of super chats that people have given to us. Thank you very much, guys, for your super chats. And the first one is from Andrew Bell, New Zealand 50. I am ashamed to be British. That was the first super chat. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the UK that are ashamed as to what happened.
Indeed, so am I. And thank you for the comment.
From Terry Saunders, 200. I think that's Australian. Thank you for your super chat. Galina, 300 rubles. Thank you for your super chat as well. We have Robin Adams, super chat, 79.99 Australian. Julian is being prosecuted for newsworthy, truthful information in the public interest. Very sad day. Thank you very much. Penguins fan, super chat Canadian 5. You guys know Malcolm Nance, the so-called ex-intelligence officer who appears on MSNBC calling Assange all kinds of words. Malcolm Nance is a hack. He's a liar. He's a buffoon. He's a hack. He pushed the Russiagate hoax. He's a paid-for stooge. That's all I have to say about Malcolm Nance, MSNBC, CNN. All those guys are hacks. They're all
exactly.
Stooges. All of them.
When you think of it, WikiLeaks has a sterling record. Sterling. Okay? No fake news. Everything they produced was authentic. But think of the news outlets that we've had to be wary of over 2.5 years of Russiagate. Look at the extreme poor quality coming out of the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC. They have no right to comment on real journalism because they don't do it themselves.
But exactly, Peter. I think you're hitting it perfectly. And here's the difference between Russiagate and Assange. Russiagate, at least you had the big three lineup on Fox News rally around Trump. Tucker, Hannity, and Laura Ingraham. Trump, and you said it many times, Peter, if it wasn't for Fox News, God knows what would have happened with the Russiagate hoax and the Russiagate narrative. Fox News really backed up Trump. In this case with Assange, I don't think we're going to hear anybody at Fox News backing him up.
No, because people are cowardice. Okay, they don't. That's a red line. Too many people say, I'm not going to go there. I just can't go there. They really should, but they won't. All right, and we wouldn't have Justice Kavanaugh if it weren't for Fox. Also, you and I commented on that all of the time. But unfortunately, on this one, they're not going to. They're just going to turn a blind eye to it. And just go along to get along because it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous to say the truth. Think of that. Think about that. That's where we are.
Alexander, we have a lot of people tuning in. I believe we have a lot of people tuning in from Australia, New Zealand. Where is Australia in all of this? We had the first comment, I'm ashamed to be British. What about Australians? What about the Australian government and Assange? Oh, we lost him. Right when I said that, Peter, we lost Alexander. Well, Peter, pick up that question. Yeah.
Yeah, Alexander McCurris is the lawyer, not me. It seems quite shameful that they're not going to stand up for one of their own citizens, particularly when, it's such a revolutionary act to say the truth. I mean, what does the Australian government really lose? Okay, I guess they would lose because the U.S. would go around and punish it and sanction it. It likes to sanction its friends as well these days. Again, it's this cowardice among journalists, and it's cowardice among governments. They don't want to have to take responsibility. It's easy just to turn a blind eye, and say, well, let someone else take care of it. Julian Assange is not an angel. I've heard many stories that he's very difficult to work with at times. Yeah, okay. But at the end result, I keep going back to the very important point. What did he do wrong? What law did he break as a publisher? None. And Australia should have the guts to stand up and say that, because it's the obvious. This is a travesty. Absolute travesty. Julian Assange exposed wrongdoing. He exposed the secret state. You and I have talked so many times about, we have these ideas about what's going on, and then through WikiLeaks, we were basically proven right with our gut feeling. Okay, that is valuable. That is very, very valuable, because we wouldn't have WikiLeaks, we wouldn't have Julian Assange if journalists actually did their job. That's why we have WikiLeaks. Because the journalists, the media will not do their job.
If Trump had not won the election, Peter, and Hillary did, do you think they would have come down this hard on Assange?
Yeah. Because I think it's just the intelligence community, and then they have all of their parrots on MSNBC and CNN, etc., that will just parrot the line. No, this is personal for these guys. Okay, they want blood, and I think quite seriously. I don't say that lightly. They want blood. Okay, this is never.
We just lost you. We just lost you for just a second. You said they want. Right when you said they want blood, I think YouTube came in and decided to cut you off for that last comment.
Well,
but now we have you. Now we have you.
The United States has the death penalty. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating.
One of the users in the chat actually asked that. Do you think he asked straight up, do you think Julian Assange is going to be killed? I mean, I think that's a valid question.
That is a potential outcome. Again, we need Alexander McCurris. He is the lawyer here among us. I think it is a death penalty offense, espionage. Okay, I may be wrong. Okay, and I'd be happy to be made correct. Okay, so again, I don't want to go too far out on the limb, but I mean, I don't think they care about the life, the future life of Julian Assange. Not by the way they've treated him. I mean, I think that's a logical thing to say.
Well, walk us back a little, Peter. To when this all started. How did we get here? How did we go from there to here?
It was 2010. Okay, it was collateral murder. Remember that? This is what Chelsea Manning leaked to Julian Assange, and it's a horrific video. It shows the U.S. military killing civilians and journalists. It's collateral murder. Then we had the hundreds of thousands of cables from the Afghanistan logs, and then we had the Iraqi logs. And it shows the secretive world of U.S. intelligence. And of course, the intelligence community did not want to have that happen. Then we had the, I think it was Vault 7,
yeah.
where you basically had some courageous person or persons in the intelligence community got hold of CIA software details and showed how remarkably that the U.S. intelligence community can go into a foreign server and leave tracks behind to make it look like somebody else did it, like the Russians. Okay, so this is something that they really, I mean, that's billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of research and development, and it's all made public. Now, people like myself could read it and not probably understand it very well. I'm not a heavily technical person, but a lot of technical people said, wow, this is what they've been up to. And of course, that's blowing their cover, and that's why there's so many people in the intelligence community that want the worst thing to happen to Julian Assange, because he exposed what they do, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, that it's not for the good. Okay, I mean, if they could use that technology to try to derail a presidential candidate and later a sitting president, nobody looked at the DNC's servers except for CrowdStrike, which works for the Democratic Party. Okay, so I mean, why didn't they apply all that fancy technology to get to the truth at the bottom of that story? And they never did. I mean, and we have the Mueller report, and they still say Russia interfered in the elections based on the belief that Russia hacked the DNC, which we have no evidence of that at all. Actually, we have a counter argument that is very, very compelling, that it was a download. Somebody in the DNC downloaded it.
What Bill Binney says, yeah.
That's what Bill Binney said.
Yeah, here's an interesting question for you, Peter. If you had a Russian agent as president of the United States in Donald Trump, and he's running the country for 2 years. So this is, massive, right? A Russian agent is running, a Russian stooge is running the United States of America. Why don't you sit down with Julian Assange if you're Mueller? Because I can't think of anything more important, and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, exactly. Julian Assange has said repeatedly that no state actors were involved. I mean, somebody gave him a device with these emails on it, okay? And he's repeatedly said that it did not come from any state actor, let alone Russia. And if you look at the whole mess that that Roger Stone has got himself in, he's got himself in trouble because he's boastful and he's got a big mouth. That's what he traffics in. Okay, trying to get information from WikiLeaks if they have any dirt on Hillary Clinton. Well, I mean, if the Trump administration was colluding with Russia, why would they need Roger Stone to get that information? It doesn't make any sense at all. And what the secret trial that I believe is going to happen, we will never know what happened. Will they be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Julian Assange got these emails from a Russian state actor? We'll never know, because it'll never be released. Okay, they want to shroud the truth, and I repeat, ever since WikiLeaks came on the scene, they have been proven 100% correct in what they have released. So, nobody has that record. Nobody has that record.
All right,
and
Alexander.
This is just an attack on the truth.
Alexander's back with us. Alexander, welcome. You're on your mobile. I take it now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Peter, you said secret trial in the U.S., and it just hit my mind. What kind of world are we living in? We have votes for Brexit, which aren't honored. We have the EU ruling over us, people in Brussels who have never been to Greece or Cyprus, where I am, and they're ruling over us. We have secret trials in the US. We have a soft coup against an elected president. Putin even commented on it the other day when he was at the Arctic conference. Guys, what kind of world are we living in? Where is this heading?
It's not to any good place whatsoever. See, this is the overall theme that I think that we've been talking about in these podcasts, is that what they want to do is they want to control the narrative. They want to have a monoculture where people are not able to participate. And Julian Assange was a very important conduit for that free exchange of ideas.
Vasia is saying right now, Alexander can comment on this. Extradition will happen in the next 20 hours, according to RT. So I think,
there you go.
got
So, I mean, I said hours, and there we are. Now, that is an incredibly truncated process. I mean, there ought to be, properly speaking, a whole legal opportunity for Assange to respond to these extradition claims, but clearly he's not going to. So that doesn't surprise me. I mean, can I just say something, Alex? You forgot to add in that litany of things that you mentioned, the very widespread censorship that's now happening.
Tommy Robinson, Alex Jones, the list goes on and on and on, obviously. Even with us, they even play games with us.
Well, indeed, we are evolving in the West into a national security state type situation. And of course, I can remember when people talked about the free world. It's becoming less and less free, and we need to say, go on saying that, because of course somebody needs to say it.
And I didn't even throw in there all the wars. I mean, I left all of that stuff out.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, this is.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, you see this flaunting of the law. You know, it's the equivalent of flaunting the law and forced regime change in Venezuela. Where's the media talking about, well, under international law, as a sovereign state? Nobody says that. Nobody wants to say the obvious, because your careers will be threatened, your publicity will be threatened, your followers will be just taken away from you. It's just cowardice. We live in a national security state with people bowing down to cowardice. That's what we have, and it's getting worse and worse.
Yes.
Alexander, it's getting worse and worse. Where is this going to take us to? We have an election 2020. If Trump wins, which I think he will win again, the re-election, God knows what's going to happen. I mean, at the deep state, the intelligence age, the Democrats are going to have it's going to be an absolute meltdown. An absolute meltdown.
Well, indeed. The one point I must make about this is, of course, if Western societies, if Western governments, not societies, if Western governments felt secure and self-confident, this sort of thing would not be happening. During the Cold War, in the West, we had much more freedom. You could listen to Radio Moscow broadcasts without having to get through jamming. You had alternative voices in the mainstream media. You had proper op-eds and all those sort of things. In those days, the Western governments were self-confident about themselves. The fact that they are acting in the way that they are, it is an appearance of power, but it is not the actions of a confident a power structure anymore. And I think we must hold on to that, because I'm sure that deep down, all of these people understand that what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I absolutely agree with that. If you cannot have a give and take, an honest give and take, and respect your interlocutor in a debate, if you can't do that, then you end up going rogue. You just go rogue and say, you know, I'm going to determine how the rules are played out, how the rules are made, and how you have to conform. And this is such an exercise in conformity. The sad thing is that so many people are willing to go along with it. That's what's tragic here. They're willing to go along with it for material things. You know, there's no idealism left. I mean, and WikiLeaks was very idealistic. It will continue. WikiLeaks will continue without Julian Assange.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, let's get to some super chats. From Lone Ranger, super chat, £199. What does QAnon say about Assange?
I haven't heard.
Yeah, I haven't heard either, but, you know, who knows? From Gek, 20 Australian dollars, super chat, thank you very much. And from John Lee, a super chat, very good point. The free world has become a national security state, a national security state. Guys, you have any final thoughts as we wrap it up and probably get back to the news and see what's going on?
Yeah, I mean,
this is huge news. Yeah.
I have to go and get my makeup on to do a crosstalk.
I was going to ask you, Peter. Actually, I was going to ask you, what's the vibe like? We're actually privy to. It's great to have you actually at RT, because RT, I think, was on top of this way before anyone else was on top of this. What's it like being at RT right now? What's the atmosphere like? How's
busy.
The reporting? It's
really busy. We had to change our guest list. We're going to have Joe Loria, he's scheduled, and Brian Becker, which both are fantastic. We should have a very good discussion, and I'm going to steal a lot of the ideas that Alexander McCure has told us during this podcast.
All right. And when is that? And when is that going to air? When is that going to be online for people to see?
I think we could get it on as early as 8 p.m. Moscow time. That's what I'm hoping.
Okay, 8 p.m. 6 p.m. London time.
That's right. In between now and the recording, hopefully we'll be getting a few more details of what actually occurred today.
All right. Alexander, what are you monitoring?
Oh, I mean, obviously, I need to get on top of the legal, legal procedure. I'm not sure one can even dignify it by that word, but I want to keep an eye on the moves. 20 hours, he'll be in the United States tomorrow. The legal case to follow. I mean, Britain is a lost cause. What we need to look at now is what's going to happen in the United States. Because, as I said, there is a legal process in the United States, however twisted and perverted it's become. And there are lawyers in the United States and people who care about these things. Can I make a point here? I mean, somebody like Rand Paul, there are people like Rand Paul still in the US Congress. There isn't a single British parliamentarian that I know of who is prepared to come out and talk about Julian Assange. So that's the difference. That is the difference in culture. So we need to follow what's going to happen in the US.
All right. Okay, guys. Let's leave it at that. We wanted to get this news out to you. We wanted to chime in on what I think is probably the biggest news we've seen in God knows how many years. I mean, this is just huge news. We'll be on top of it. If anything else breaks, we just may jump on and do some more live streams.
Absolutely.
If not, we'll definitely get a video out on this for sure.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for your super chats. Thank you for joining us. To Peter in Moscow at RT Studios. Peter, great job at RT. We look forward to your broadcast. You said with Joe Loria and who else is going to be?
And Brian Becker.
And Brian Becker, with Joe Loria and Brian Becker. Really good. Give us a little bit of info on Joe Loria. He has a very close connection to WikiLeaks and to Assange.
Actually, the book that Joe Loria wrote based on Hillary Clinton's emails, Julian Assange wrote the foreword to the book. So they have a very tight relationship. And Joe Loria now, as editor at Consortium News, has been running a weekly vigil. Susie Dawson from New Zealand, who's now based in Russia, seeking political asylum. She has gotten, I just saw one name, Im.com, and other people are going to be joining in an emergency vigil. So keep an eye out on that. Though every time they send out a notification, it somehow disappears. People don't get it. So, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, guys, if we know that, you're having trouble with the notifications as well. The only thing I can tell you is I put in the links. There's an application blank. I post all the notifications on a different app, and I try to let everyone know who's following the Duran on that app when we're coming out with a video, what the video is about, everything. So if you download that app and follow us, blank chat, the link is in the description box. You can get updates irregardless of YouTube. So we're trying to find ways around it. And we will win. We will find ways around it. And we hope that you guys get the notifications every time we do come out with breaking news or a video. Alexander, we'll be on top of this. You'll be ready for a video.
We certainly will. Just to say, Edward Snowden has now spoken out about this. He said that it's a dark moment for press freedom.
Yeah.
Right.
So another very brave whistleblower. A safe, because he found his way to Moscow, where he didn't want to be, but he at least is safe. Assange is not safe in London. What does that tell you about the modern world?
That's an interesting way to end.
Interesting way to end. Yeah. All right, guys, we'll be on top of this. And if anything comes out, we'll do a live stream. We'll definitely do a video on this. Thank you, Peter Lavelle in Moscow. Alexander McHurst, the Oracle of London. Thank you once again. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. Take care, everybody.